let you know what the format's going to be. I'm going to ask some questions. I'll tell you when we ask the question how much time you get. I may have a 1-minute follow-up. Most of them are about 2 minutes to answer. We're going to go round robin. So the first question is going to go to Pete, and then we're just going to go, and then we'll move down the line and roll back and try to make sure everybody gets enough exposure. I'm running the timer. I also keep it at DIY, and I have 2 little warning signs, so I'll let you know when you're running low on time. And like we said, at least Stephen sent this out, is if you keep to your time, you have a little more time at the end to talk one-on-one with voters, so we think that's a pretty big incentive to be mindful of the orchestra music playing you off when it's time for the next game. So, my first question, I believe Ed is the only candidate here that lives north of 183. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so starting with Pete, let me back up. I want everybody to do a 1-minute introduction. I'm sorry, I skipped that.
Well, hello, my name is Pete Salazar, running as candidate for District 7. I was born and raised in the district. I spent the first 15 years of my life off of Grover, 5204. And then I later moved on to areas of the east side. I went to school in Johnson High School. So I went to Wooten Elementary School, and then I went to W Middle School with Pulse Capacity. So that's why I have my campaign, Pete is Awesome, because I was educated here, I worked here, and my family's here in every capacity. So that's what gives me a desire to make a better Austin, because at the end of the day, we're going to have to really look at our changes and see what we've done to make sure that the future children have the Austin that I was given the capacity to grow up in. Maybe be molded in it. Thank you.
Evening, everybody. Thanks for inviting us. I'm Leslie Poole, and I'm running in District 7 as well. I live just down the street on Shoal Creek Boulevard in Rosedale. I moved here in 1980. I was 25 years old and had just gotten married. I came to this town with a lot of plans and a lot of hopes, and found a town here that I could easily put down deep roots and stay, because it was a place easy to love. In the 34 years that I've lived here, I've worked at federal level, at the state, for 2 different agencies, TxDOT and what was then called the Employment Commission. It's now the Workforce Commission. I also worked at the legislature back in 2000 and 2003. I have served on a number of boards and commissions and bond task forces, and for me, it's a matter of paying it forward, my experience over 34 years. Now I'm running to put that at City Hall. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Melissa Zone. I'm excited to be here because a lot of the philosophy of Aura is what I've been doing for 20 years as a professional urban regional planner. Originally from Cleveland, Ohio, and moved to Florida to take care of my ailing mother, and worked there as a planner. Fell in love with this incredible man who happens to be a 4th-generation Texan, who told me, oh, by the way, I want to move home. Well, my first visit to Austin, I thought I could live here. I did transportation, water resource planning. My career has tried to get people out of their cars, on walking, making compact cities. My goal is to take my experience and let's move Austin to let it grow, sensible. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeb White. I'm running for District 7. I live here in Allendale, just a couple of blocks up north here in Shoalwood. I'm a native of Southeast Texas, Newry County, in the Houston area. And my cousins actually lived in the neighborhood, just on Fizet on the other side of Shoal Creek. And I used to come here when it was the Americana to see these occasionally. But I've worked on urbanist issues for most of my professional career. I've served on boards and commissions, Parks Board, Downtown Commission, Wall Creek Commission, 2012 Bond Commission. And as an attorney, I've worked as the Assistant Attorney General for Texas, at the AG's office. I've also as a staff attorney at the Land Office to the Railroad Commission. One of the real guiding principles during my professional career has been urbanism, the idea that how we can better manage our cities for the quality of life and the protection of environmental values.
My name's Ed English, and like everyone else up here, I'm running for City Council of District 7. Grew up in South Texas, Vietnam-era veteran. I was a pilot instructor, having a degree, a BA in political science. I have been in Austin for 34 years, 31 years, been married 34 years, and all 31 years has been in the district. I'm retired now, been retired a few years. My background is sales and marketing with a very heavy emphasis on contract management. I think that's an incredibly valuable skill set to bring to council with a $3.5 billion budget next year. Also, I take great pride in saying that I was a key member of Austinites for Geographic Representation in getting the new council system in place. I was more or less a captain and responsible for everything for the organization north of Anderson.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to start back where we jumped ahead there. Ed, you're the only one that lives north of 183. So 183 bisects District 7. What is your number one issue that you would reach out to the other half of the district? So for all of you, it would be the northern half. For Ed, it's going to be the southern half. That you would prioritize to build goodwill and effective representation across the whole district rather than centered on your own neighborhood. Pete, would you like to go first?
Okay. Yes. I mean, for me, I was born and bred in Austin. My father was a cab driver for 25 years. So I rode shotgun with them in every capacity. So I was in all over Austin. In Ed's district, they said north. I've not because he was a cab driver, because we were so mobile. You know, I've eaten at Canary Roost, Double Dave's, all those capacities. We had those relationships. We had those relationships throughout Austin. I mean, it's funny to me now to think about districts, but growing up, we didn't sectionalize Austin to that capacity. Austin was such a city that you could move north and south. Everybody went to the Aquafest, and that was the one thing that was affordable. That was one thing, because if you don't know what that is, that was our cultural point. That was our focal point that made Austin awesome. It didn't matter if you liked the Hama music. It didn't matter if you liked country music or you were from the west side of Austin. That festival, that entity, was kind of almost like a dinner call. Like everybody come home and it's time to come and eat. So just like you come from large families and you have your own personal interests, the Aquafest and festivals like that always reminded us that we were one city and that we were one family. And I think that is a huge difference now when we examine not only the council, but what we consider important in our growth. And for me, north or south, it is all of Austin. It's all of District 7, and it's all my family. So I'm going to work hard and totally to make this correct and move forward the best way possible.
Ms. Poole?
There's two things that I would talk with residents north of 183 about. One is transportation and the frequency and whether there's express buses, for instance, and how easy it is for you to get north and south, east and west. And what kind of congestion? Do you have complete streets? Are they connected? Can you get from your neighborhood to the library? How many libraries do you have? Parks, pools, and libraries are important. The other specific thing would be reduction in crime. I think that APD could look at its deployment schedule and have more of the cops visible north of 183 in areas where crime is clearly happening, but maybe at a level they are not going to take the time to spend up there, where most of their resources are downtown and on the east side. So those would be the two things. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Zone?
Well, my first year moving here, we lived north of 183 on Metric near Cedar Bend and Lamplight Village. And the reason we moved to that area was because we wanted to be on public transportation. We had taken the 1L. And anyway, so I had started already working with people. I do a lot of pro bono work for neighborhoods and individuals and small businesses who could not maneuver through the city bureaucracy. And that establishment has set a certain tone. And small businesses and people can't afford to hire a planner or an attorney. So I started helping them, and people who live north of 183, they know Reef Myers Automotive helped them. I've helped families. We moved south, and we now live in Crestview, And I kept that up. As a planner, I pride myself in not just doing it as a living, but making sure that a lot of people are able to have access to City Hall, even though City Hall makes it very difficult to maneuver. I have to say, from that experience, working with the people up north and south, there's similar problems that they have, and most of it's at City Hall. And you need to know someone who understands the policy, regulations, and is willing to make some tough calls and get problems handled. And that's what I bring. So I just want to say that I'm going to continue doing that once elected.
Thanks. Well, District 7 is basically defined by Burnett Road and then Palmer Lane, with Palmer Lane being the principal spine for folks who live north of 183, other than the folks who live in the Lane. And the folks that live along Palmer have not felt very included in what goes on in the city. As I've talked to them, I hear their complaints and their concerns about how they feel they've been ignored and overlooked. One of the primary promises of the 10-1 election, the system we're going to, is accountability. That I'm running to be your council member and to be the person you know to call at City Hall, and the person who will make sure that you know what the city is doing in your neighborhood, what is happening, what's the schedule, what are the issues and concerns. And also accountable to make sure that the system, the city, and the whole 10-1 system as a whole works. So, as I said, parks, pools, libraries, those are big concerns for folks who want to see resources concerned. Palmer Lane's got some terrible traffic, and got to come up with, see what we can do about that. There is the North Corridor Plan under Project Connect, which involves expanding transit resources, including the new east-west route through the north part. The northern area borders into Runberg and into the Runberg area, and a lot of those concerns are shared by some of the folks in District 7. And so we've got to look at and make sure that APD is providing the coverage and the protection and the safety that we need in that neighborhood. And certainly is one of the main things I'm looking forward to is to have an office somewhere in the district, probably a library or other public facility north of here, where I will have regular hours where folks can come in and meet with me without having to go downtown to City Hall.
And Ed, how would you do with us southeast?
Well, I'll start generally speaking and kind of fine tune it a little bit. The beauty of the new 10-1 system is that you do have someone that lives at least reasonably close to you. I grant you that the district's 80,000 in population are actually small cities in and of themselves. But something that I put a high priority on is making sure that if I'm elected, that I see the district as a whole. I understand that 183 does offer sort of an artificial boundary, but I think if you have an honest, open-minded representative that's actually in tune with the district from one end to the other, those differences are not all that significant. The issues that are top tier, and I kind of break them down into two levels. Top tier, they're citywide issues. That's accountability, that's traffic, that's property taxes. There are a number of issues that I've been asked by folks in the district to focus on if I'm elected. However, there are differences within the district, and I think you need to be tuned into that. Living in the district for 31 years, I've got very good contacts from one end of the district to the other, who are very good spokesmen for their representative neighborhoods. And on the south end of the district, I hear a lot of things that people want me to focus on, but two generally come to the surface more frequently than others. One is protection for the neighborhoods. The south end of the district is close to the core of the city, and the expansion of I'm looking at the time, the expansion of the high-density developments is really putting some pressure on some of these south end neighborhoods. They're nervous about losing the character of their neighborhoods. The other is parks. Austin has some great parks and a lot of acreage, but it's not well geographically distributed, and I'd like to see more parks on the south end of the district.
Thank you. This is another District 7 specific question. We're going to start with this pool. current city council passed a resolution directing the planning commission to study new corridor plans for Burnett and Anderson Lane that reflect the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan. Do you support new corridor plans for Burnett Road and Anderson Lane? And what is your vision for these corridors as the future of this rapidly changing midtown area of the city of Austin? I'm going to give you 2 minutes each on this one.
Okay, thanks. The corridor plan is necessary. In the past, the corridors were planned on the east side and then they were planned on the west side. So there was no coherence from one side of the street to the other. So by having the bonds to fix the roads on Burnett and North Lamar, and by having corridor studies, we have an opportunity to correct a lot of the problems that have manifested themselves along those routes. I mentioned complete streets previously. It's important that we have connected and passable sidewalks, for instance, for people who want to walk or next to the library from their neighborhood. It would be helpful with the neighborhoods as the planning continues for the city to be as transparent as possible in the planning, so that the mistrust that exists among the neighbors with the changes to the neighborhoods can be dealt with. There's a concern that the neighborhood plans will be thrown out. I've talked with staff about that. They say that's not the case. So I'm following the corridor study on that topic to make sure that the neighborhoods are treated fairly and that their interests are clearly recognized and reflected and taken to heart. There's sometimes a barrier when the staff is involved. We feel as citizens that we're talking to them. The city council members have a barrier that is staff between, and there's no penetration of the dialogue, and that needs to be improved.
If I can ask you a quick follow-up. Speaking of transparency, what would you like to see to encourage or ensure transparency as you define it? What would you like to see to make sure that happens? How do you define it?
I've been to planning sessions. We all go to those where you get to put the dots on the map and say, you know, this is the cluster of the thing that I want, and then the staff goes away and you never see that document again, and it gets somehow massaged internally, and there is no feedback, and there's no direct conversation or dialogue with the people who have come to those meetings. I've been to plenty of those stakeholder meetings and then stopped going because it didn't seem like it was really, that anything that I was saying or the people that I was with really being listened to or heard. So I don't want to put everything on staff, but from the perspective of a citizen working in the system and in the process, that's what it appears to me as someone who's been there. You can't get through that barrier.
Thank you. Ms. Zoe, you have 2 minutes.
So, as you know, as an urban regional planner, I've done extensive corridor studies where we started from the study all the way through implementation. 3 that I'm quite proud of, where even one, before they even had it called form-based codes, were popular. This was early 2000, and I was one of the writers of these regulations. What we need in city council is someone who isn't just relying on staff or a consultant to tell you, oh, this is a good idea. You need someone who actually has probably more experience than a lot of the staff who are new. You want to be able to ask those tough questions. What I bring is that wealth of information. Doing corridor studies is tough, but more importantly, and what's even harder, is actually implementing them and having them successful. And when I've done that, we've been able to keep people, small businesses, and people in their homes without displacing them. That's a huge concern with a lot of people. We were able to add density without it infringing on people's homes that were in the inner core neighborhood. And they were compatible. You have to understand that difficult technical side of planning. But more importantly, I've gotten a lot of support from all the major neighborhoods along Anderson and Vernon. And they're behind me because of my experience. And their proven experience is going to help facilitate as we grow and change and redevelop, that they know they could trust somebody because of that, not having ties to the people they feel that have disappointed them all along. And it's not my study, it's not what I want, it's how I will facilitate the changes, what the residents want, with the competing forces that are out there. And for I'm good,
Okay.
but that's really what I'm doing.
I would like to ask you a 1-minute follow-up question, if I could. You mentioned displacement,
Mhm.
and I'm freely admit I'm not an urban planner. But when I look at Burnett Road and Anderson Lane, I see a lot of stuff that pawn shops and carpet stores and title, yeah, you know, if I need a quick loan on the weekend, I know where to go. I was at that meeting where they originally broached this subject. I actually sat next to you. And they mentioned that on the edges and on the boundaries, there might be some overlap that they're going to have to define. But what I'm curious is, to what extent are you saying displacement might occur on those corridors where it involves the title-owned places as opposed to actual homeowners?
There are a lot of rentals, Corey, that those apartments, and what's really I'm concerned about is right now they're affordable. And what happens is when you do a corridor redevelopment, inevitably what happens is the people that live there, the landowner says, oh great, city investment, I'm coming in and I'm going to redevelop my property. They might not even demolish the building, however they might, it depends. But those renters who are there who could afford the rent now will not be able to afford the rent. And you have to know those actual policies that will keep them in their home while still allowing the development to happen. So when I heard that, and you and I talked a lot about the stuff that went on, we have some great apartments, they're in good shape. I want to keep them there for those who can't afford to live there.
Thank you. Jeb, you have 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, again, from my background in planning and the work I've done, you know, I'd be all in support of this. And there is certainly a need for this. We're seeing the transformation along Burnett. We've got areas, we've got surface parking lots, we've got storage, the former drive-in is a storage facility. We've got some large areas in tracts where redevelopment could be beneficial. There's a definite need to develop the housing density along Burnett to make it work as a transit corridor. But I got to say that from, I was at the meeting at Lamar, and staff came out and they attempted to explain, what they're trying to do for this and sort of why we're doing this now when we're going into code next and it's going to change the rules here in just 2 years, 18 months from now, 2 years from now. And folks don't understand. Folks have a lot of questions about why this is going to do it and how it's going to work with neighborhood plans. What's it going to look like as a transition between the sites right on the corridor and back into moving just briefly back into the neighborhoods. And as I've gone to the neighborhood meetings and listened to people talk, and they try to explain to their neighbors what these plans are about, nobody knows. Nobody can really say, nobody can articulate, but there's a lot of anxiety in the neighborhood about what's going on, about what this is going on. And the planning process, I think the only thing the planning process is doing right now is feeding that anxiety. So, one of the things that is certainly needed here is some clarity, some clear purpose around this plan, probably a tighter focus to see what we can do. Certainly one thing, again, as a council member, as part of accountability, having a council member specifically as the interface that the staff knows they need to talk to before they go to the neighborhoods to talk about this stuff, and the neighborhoods know they can go to talk to when they have concerns